The monitoring displays in the observation chamber began showing readings that the Academy technicians had never encountered before. Junho enhancement systems were fluctuating wildly as they attempted to process combat situations that violated every principle of their programming. His neural implants, designed to handle thousands of combat scenarios simultaneously, were overloading from trying to fight an opponent who was not actually fighting. The crowd pressed against viewing screens, watching in fascination as the giant mantis warrior stumbled through the virtual desert like someone learning to walk. His forearms swung powerful weapons in random directions, while his targeting computers spun through calculation loops that led nowhere. The most advanced combat enhancement systems in the galaxy were being defeated by their own complexity. Taeho remained standing peacefully in the center of the battlefield. His consciousness now expanded throughout the entire simulation environment. The monitoring equipment showed his neural patterns, creating harmonious waves that interfaced directly with the virtual reality systems. His mind was not fighting the computer programs, but dancing with them in perfect synchronization. Dr. Yoon-seo wings had turned colors that she did not know existed, displaying patterns that seemed to shift and flow like living art. Her natural ability to sense mental states was overwhelmed by the depth and complexity emanating from the human student. His consciousness seemed to fill the entire chamber, extending far beyond what should have been possible for any organic being in the virtual desert. Junho found himself trapped in a maze of his own making. Every tactical decision, his enhancement, systems calculated led to new problems that required more calculations, creating an endless loop of digital confusion. His weapon systems would lock onto targets that disappeared before he could fire, while his defensive programs activated against threats that were never actually there. The watching students began to understand that they were witnessing something historic. The human was not using superior technology or physical abilities to win. Instead, he was demonstrating that millions of years of natural evolution had created mental capabilities that surpassed anything artificial intelligence could achieve. His meditation techniques had developed awareness that transcended technological enhancement. Instructor Kang Soo studied the neural monitoring displays with growing amazement. His reptilian species had always prided itself on logical thinking, but the patterns emerging from Taeho consciousness followed logic so advanced that it appeared magical. The human was simultaneously existing in multiple states of awareness while maintaining perfect mental balance. The simulation computers themselves began responding to Taeho expanded consciousness. The virtual desert environment started shifting and flowing like a living organism. The artificial landscape became an extension of his meditative state, creating beauty and harmony where there had been harsh emptiness before sand dunes flowed like water, while the red sun softened to golden warmth. Junho enhancement systems finally reached critical overload as they encountered paradoxes they could not resolve. His multiple targeting computers were simultaneously tracking the same opponent in dozens of different locations, while his tactical programs generated millions of contradictory battle plans. The advanced technology that made him a superior warrior was now destroying itself through excessive complexity. In the real world, Junho's physical body began showing signs of severe neural stress. His chitinous armor clicked and rattled as automatic systems attempted to regulate the overload damage occurring in his enhancement implants. Medical technicians prepared emergency disconnection protocols in case his augmented system suffered permanent failure. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the impossible became undeniably real. The tiny human student, using nothing but natural mental abilities, was systematically dismantling one of the most advanced combat systems in known space, without firing a single shot or making an aggressive move. His victory was achieved through perfect understanding rather than superior force. Taeho opened his eyes fully and looked with compassion at his struggling opponent. "You are not my enemy, Junho," he said, quietly. His voice carried clearly through the virtual environment despite the chaos of overloading weapon systems and failing computers. "We are both students here trying to learn something important about ourselves and our capabilities. Academy." Commander Sung-ho stood up slowly in the observation deck, his ancient features showing profound amazement. In all his centuries of experience, he had never witnessed anything comparable to this demonstration. The human was revealing that natural, Consciousness could achieve technological-level performance through pure mental discipline. The neural monitoring equipment registered Taeho consciousness as completely stable and centered, even while interfacing with complex computer systems that were designed for augmented minds. His brain patterns showed the same peaceful meditation state he had maintained throughout the entire match, but now expanded to encompass the virtual battlefield itself. Junho weapons fell silent as his enhancement systems entered emergency shutdown mode to prevent permanent damage. His forearms hung limply, while his compound eyes stared unseeing at the transformed virtual landscape. The desert had become a garden of flowing sand sculptures and gentle light, patterns that reflected Taeho inner peace and harmony. In the observation chamber, alien students from dozens of different species whispered among themselves in languages from across the galaxy. All of them were trying to process what they had witnessed. The human had demonstrated that his species' primitive meditation techniques could overwhelm the most advanced combat technology through perfect mental balance and understanding. Dr. Yoon Seo approached the combat interface chairs to check both participants. Her wings now displayed soft rainbow patterns indicating her amazement at the unprecedented neural activity she was observing. The human student had achieved something that medical science said was impossible, interfacing with artificial systems using purely natural consciousness. The simulation began shutting down automatically as Junho neural implants could no longer maintain connection to the virtual environment. His enhancement systems were offline, and his consciousness was returning to baseline levels after suffering complete tactical overload. The match was ending not because anyone had been defeated, but because the technology itself had surrendered as the virtual desert faded away. Taeho opened his eyes completely and looked around the observation chamber at all the alien faces staring down at him in wonder. His expression remained calm and peaceful, showing no signs of triumph or pride. He had not won a victory over an opponent but had demonstrated a truth about the nature of consciousness itself. The crowd remained silent, waiting to see what would happen next. They had expected to witness a quick combat demonstration, but instead had observed something that challenged their fundamental understanding of intelligence awareness and the relationship between natural and artificial capabilities. The small human student had revealed that sometimes the most primitive approaches were actually the most advanced. The combat simulation chamber fell completely silent as Taeho disconnected from the neural interface system. His movements were calm and deliberate as he removed the sensor pads from his forehead, showing no signs of stress or fatigue from the mental battle. The monitoring equipment registered his brain patterns, returning to normal resting states as if he had simply awakened from peaceful sleep. Junho remained unconscious in his interface chair, while medical technicians worked frantically to assess the damage to his enhancement systems. The sophisticated neural implants that made him such a formidable warrior had suffered severe overload trying to process combat scenarios that exceeded their programming parameters. Dr. Yoon Seo wings displayed concerned orange patterns as she monitored his vital signs. The crowd of spectators remained frozen in stunned amazement, trying to process what they had witnessed. Many had expected to see a brief demonstration of Mantis combat superiority, followed by quick human defeat. Instead, they had observed something that challenged everything. They thought they understood about warfare technology and the capabilities of natural consciousness. Academy Commander Sung Ho descended from the observation deck to personally examine both participants. His ancient species had accumulated millions of years of knowledge about different forms of intelligence, but the human student had demonstrated mental abilities that seemed to transcend all previous categories. The implications were staggering for galactic understanding of consciousness itself. Taeho stood up from his chair and immediately walked over to check on his opponent, showing genuine concern for Junho's well-being. Rather than celebrating victory, several alien students moved aside nervously as the human approached, but his peaceful demeanor made it clear he intended no further harm to the unconscious Mantis warrior. "Is he going to be all right?" Taeho asked Dr. Yoon Seo as she continued monitoring Junho's vital signs. His voice showed real worry for someone who had challenged him to potentially deadly combat. The alien medical officer was amazed by this display of compassion following such an intense confrontation. His enhancement systems suffered severe overload, but there appears to be no permanent damage, the doctor replied while her wings shifted through diagnostic color patterns. His neural implants will need several days to reset and recalibrate, but he should make a full recovery. The human nodded with obvious relief at this news. The moment combat began, Junho exploded into motion within the virtual desert. His 4 razor-sharp arms materialized advanced energy weapons, while his enhanced neural systems calculated attack patterns faster than normal minds could follow. The air around him shimmered with heat distortion as powerful weapons charged up, preparing to unleash devastating attacks on his motionless opponent. In the observation chamber, the crowd watched display screens showing Junho neural activity spiking to incredible levels. His enhancement systems processed millions of combat variables every second, analyzing terrain advantages, weapon selections, and tactical approaches. The readouts looked like violent storms of electrical activity as his augmented mind operated at maximum capacity. Taeho remained exactly where he had started, standing calmly in the center of the simulated battlefield. His eyes were closed, and his arms hung relaxed at his sides, as if he were still sitting in peaceful meditation. The monitoring equipment showed his brain patterns continuing in the same slow, steady waves, completely unchanged by the beginning of combat. The spectators began murmuring with confusion and concern. Many assumed the human had frozen up from terror. When faced with such an overwhelming opponent, others wondered if his primitive mind simply could not interface properly with the advanced simulation system. Either way, everyone expected the match to end within seconds. Junho locked onto his target and fired his first volley of energy blasts. The brilliant beams streaked across the desert at light speed, creating trails of superheated air and explosive impacts where they struck. However, when the smoke cleared, Taeho was no longer standing in that location. The human had somehow moved without appearing to move. This unexpected development caused Junho enhancement systems to recalculate rapidly. His targeting computers had maintained perfect lock on the human throughout the attack sequence, yet somehow the target had avoided destruction. The Mantis warrior's multiple eyes searched the battlefield, while his neural implants processed thousands of new tactical scenarios. Taeho now stood several meters away in exactly the same relaxed pose with his eyes still closed. The desert sand around his feet showed no footprints or signs of movement, as if he had simply appeared in the new location. The monitoring systems continued showing his neural patterns as unchanged, displaying the same deep meditative state. The crowd pressed closer to the viewing screens, trying to understand what they had witnessed. Several faculty members began checking the simulation equipment, wondering if technical malfunctions were causing display errors. The idea that someone could move within virtual combat space without registering neural activity changes seemed impossible, according to everything they knew about the system. Junho fired again, this time using multiple weapon systems simultaneously to saturate the entire area around his opponent. Energy beams, plasma bursts, and explosive projectiles filled the air, creating a devastating barrage that should have been impossible to survive. The virtual battlefield erupted in brilliant flashes and thunderous explosions. When the attack ended, Taeho stood in a completely different location, still maintaining his peaceful meditation pose. The desert around him showed no signs of the tremendous destruction that had just occurred, while the areas where the attacks had struck displayed realistic damage from the simulated weapons impacts in the observation deck. Dr. Yoon SEO wings began displaying even stranger color patterns as she monitored both fighters. The Mantis warrior showed signs of increasing stress and confusion as his enhancement system struggled to track an opponent who seemed to exist outside normal combat parameters. The human continued showing impossible neural stability. How is he moving without thinking about movement? One student whispered to another. The simulation requires conscious mental commands to control virtual actions. Yet the human appeared to be changing positions without any detectable brain activity related to movement or tactical planning. Junho began advancing across the battlefield while maintaining continuous fire from all 4 weapon systems. His enhanced reflexes and targeting computers should have made missing impossible, yet every shot passed harmlessly through empty space. The human seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, simultaneously creating a tactical situation that his combat programming could not analyze. The Mantis warrior's confidence began wavering as his enhancement systems encountered problems they were not designed to handle. His neural implants had been programmed with combat scenarios from thousands of different species, but none of them included opponents who could avoid attacks without appearing to move or think about defense. Tae-ho opened his eyes slowly and looked directly at his opponent across the virtual desert. For the first time since the match began, his monitoring displays showed a slight change in neural activity. The patterns remained centered and calm, but now they expanded outward, creating interference effects with the simulation systems themselves. The watching crowd gasped as the display screens began showing readings they had never seen before. Tae-ho neural patterns were somehow affecting the virtual environment itself, creating ripples and distortions that spread throughout the simulated battlefield. The desert landscape began shifting and changing. In response to his mental state, Jun-ho found his weapon systems becoming less responsive as strange interference patterns disrupted his connection to the simulation computers. His enhancement systems detected the problems but could not identify their source. The battlefield itself seemed to be turning against him, making accurate targeting increasingly difficult. Academy. Commander Sung-ho leaned forward in his observation seat with intense interest. His ancient species had witnessed many remarkable events throughout galactic history, but this display of natural mental power was unlike anything in their extensive records. The human was demonstrating abilities that seemed to transcend technological enhancement in the virtual desert. The air began shimmering around Tae-ho as his consciousness expanded further into the simulation systems. His neural patterns now filled the monitoring displays with flowing designs that resembled natural phenomena like ocean currents and wind patterns. The artificial battlefield was becoming an extension of his meditative awareness. Jun-ho weapons fire became increasingly erratic as his targeting system struggled with the interference effects. His enhanced reflexes, which normally operated faster than thought, were being overwhelmed by sensory input they could not process. The virtual environment was responding to mental commands that his computers could not detect or understand. The crowd watched in stunned silence as the impossible continued unfolding before them. The giant Mantis warrior, with all his technological advantages, was being systematically neutralized by an opponent who had not moved aggressively or fired a single shot. The human was winning through perfect stillness rather than superior firepower. Tae-ho finally spoke for the first time since the simulation began, his quiet voice somehow carrying clearly across the virtual desert. Despite the distance, you are fighting against your own expectations. Jun-ho, he said gently, the battle you think you are in does not actually exist. These words sent shockwaves through both the virtual battlefield and the observation chamber as everyone began to realize they were witnessing something far more profound than a simple combat match. The human had revealed that true mastery came not from enhancement systems or advanced weapons, but from understanding the deepest nature of conflict itself. The combat simulation chamber had never been so crowded in its entire history. Students pressed against every available viewing space, while faculty members filled the observation deck completely. Even maintenance workers and cafeteria staff found excuses to peek through doorways hoping to catch glimpses of the unprecedented match. Everyone wanted to witness what they expected to be the fastest combat defeat in Academy records. The betting had reached astronomical proportions, with odds running 10,000 to 1 against the human student. Some alien species were wagering their entire monthly allowances on what seemed like the safest bet in galactic history. A few crazy individuals continued placing small bets on Tae-ho, but most students assumed they were either drunk on fermented fruit juice or had completely lost their minds. In the preparation area, Jun-ho performed his final combat rituals. His forearms moved through complex ceremonial patterns while his enhancement systems completed their startup sequences. The sound of his armor plates shifting and clicking filled the air as servos and actuators calibrated themselves for maximum performance. His compound eyes scanned readouts from internal displays showing all systems functioning at peak efficiency. The Mantis warrior had spent the previous evening reviewing every piece of available information about human combat techniques. What he found was mostly historical data about ancient fighting styles using primitive weapons and hand-to-hand combat. None of it seemed relevant to modern neural warfare, where mental processing speed and computer assistance determined victory. His confidence grew stronger with every file he examined. Across the chamber, Tai-Ho sat, quietly with his eyes closed and his breathing slow and steady. He had not changed into special combat gear, or activated any enhancement systems because he had none to activate. Instead, he simply sat in meditation pose, with his worn notebook resting. On his lap, several concerned alien students watched him with growing worry, wondering if he had given up before the fight even started. Dr. Yoon Seo, the Academy's medical officer, approached both fighters to conduct final health checks. Her species. The healing moths had natural abilities to sense physical and mental conditions in other beings. Her large, soft wings shimmered with patterns that changed color based on what she detected in nearby life forms. She examined Jun-Ho first, and her wings glowed bright orange, indicating perfect health and maximum combat readiness. His enhancement systems were running flawlessly, and his aggressive mental state showed complete preparation for battle. When she moved to check Tai-Ho, however, her wings began displaying colors she had never seen before. The patterns were deep blue mixed with silver, creating spirals that seemed to move even when her wings were still. Dr. Yoon Seo had examined thousands of beings from hundreds of different species, but she had never encountered neural patterns like the ones emanating from the human student. His mind showed incredible depth and complexity, despite having no technological augmentation whatsoever. Is everything all right with the human student? Instructor Kang Soo asked when he noticed the doctor's confused expression. His lizard-like features showed concern about potential medical problems that might delay the much-anticipated match. The doctor continued studying her wing patterns for several more moments before responding. His vital signs are perfect and his mental state shows no signs of stress or fear. However, I am detecting neural activity patterns that I cannot identify with my natural scanning abilities. He appears to be in some kind of extremely deep meditative trance. This information spread quickly through the crowd, causing even more speculation about what the mysterious human might be planning. Some students theorized he was using secret Earth technologies that looked like meditation. Others suggested he had gone into shock from terror and his mind was shutting down to protect itself from the upcoming trauma. The simulation technicians completed their equipment checks and announced that all systems were ready for combat activation. The virtual battlefield program loaded into the chamber's main computers, creating a shared mental space where both fighters would experience fully realistic combat. The program could simulate any type of environment or weapons the participants might need. Academy Commander Sung-Ho stood up in the observation deck to address the assembled crowd. His ancient species, the first ones, had been exploring space since before most other civilizations discovered fire. His words carried tremendous authority throughout the galactic community, and everyone fell silent when he began speaking. Today we witness something unique in our Academy's long history, he announced in a voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. A representative of the newest species to join our galactic community faces one of our most accomplished young warriors. This match will provide valuable insights into human capabilities and their potential contributions to our shared future. The commander's words reminded everyone that this fight had implications far beyond simple student rivalry. The human species was still proving itself worthy of membership in the galactic community, and their performance here could influence important political decisions about Earth's role in interstellar affairs. A devastating defeat might suggest that humans were not ready for advanced military responsibilities. Jun-Ho felt the weight of expectation and reveled in it. His species had earned respect throughout the galaxy through demonstrations of superior combat abilities. Today he would add another victory to Mantis' military reputation while simultaneously putting an upstart species back in their proper place. The thought of easy triumph filled him with savage anticipation. The neural interface systems activated, connecting both fighters' consciousness to the virtual combat environment. In an instant, they found themselves standing in a vast desert landscape under a harsh red sun. The simulation could have created any environment, but the computer had randomly selected this harsh wasteland as their battleground. Virtual weapons and equipment materialized around them, giving each fighter access to whatever tools they might need. Advanced energy, weapons, armored vehicles, and defensive systems appeared within easy reach, Both combatants could modify the environment or create new tools simply by thinking about them clearly enough. Junho immediately began activating weapon systems and defensive protocols. His enhanced neural processes evaluated thousands of tactical possibilities in the first few seconds, while his consciousness interfaced directly with the simulation computers. The virtual battlefield became an extension of his augmented mind, allowing him to process combat variables at superhuman speeds. Tae-ho stood completely still in the center of the simulated desert. His virtual body looked exactly like his real one. Simple training clothes and no visible equipment. The monitoring systems showed his neural patterns remaining in the same deep meditative state he had maintained before the simulation began, which confused everyone watching from outside. The crowd studied the display screens, showing both fighters' neural activity. Junho patterns looked like lightning storms with millions of calculations racing through enhancement systems at incredible speeds. Tae-ho patterns remained as calm as still water, with slow, steady waves that seemed almost like sleeping rather than combat readiness. "This is it," Instructor Kang-soo announced as the final preparation countdown reached 0. Both fighters are connected, and the combat simulation is fully active. The match begins now, in the virtual desert. Junho raised his forearms and began his assault, confident that this would be the shortest fight in Academy history. The crowd held their collective breath, waiting to see how quickly the human would fall. But what happened next would challenge everything they thought. They knew about the nature of true combat mastery. The next morning, news about the combat challenge had spread throughout the entire Galactic Military Academy. Students from every program and several different alien species gathered in small groups, talking excitedly about the upcoming match. Everyone wanted to know how the small human would face the giant mantis warrior. Most conversations ended with laughter as beings imagined the tiny earthling trying to fight someone like Junho. The Academy cafeteria alien students made bets about how long the fight would last. The popular opinion was that Junho would win in less than 10 seconds. Some cruel students bet on whether the human would run away before the match even started. Only a very few strange aliens put their money on Tae-ho, and everyone thought they were either crazy or had never seen a mantis warrior fight before. Tae-ho sat alone at a small table in the corner eating his simple breakfast of fruits and grains. His calm expression had not changed since accepting the challenge yesterday. While hundreds of alien eyes watched him with curiosity and pity, he seemed completely unaware of the attention he read from his paper notebook while eating, as if this was just another normal day at the academy. His roommate, Jinwoo, came over to sit with him. Jinwoo was from the peaceful planet Harmony, where beings had forearms and soft purple fur covering their entire bodies. His species never fought wars and believed in solving all problems through discussion and understanding. This made him very worried about his human friend facing such a dangerous opponent. "Tae-ho, are you certain about this challenge?" Jinwoo asked in his gentle musical voice. His 4 hands moved nervously as he spoke. Junho is known throughout the academy as the most skilled combat student. His species has been fighting wars for thousands of years, and his personal enhancement systems are military grade. You could be seriously hurt. Tae-ho looked up from his book and smiled at his concerned friend. "Thank you for worrying about me, Jinwoo. That shows you have a good heart, but I'm not afraid of getting hurt. The body heals quickly, but lessons learned in difficult situations last forever. This challenge will teach both of something important, but what can you possibly learn from being defeated so quickly?" Jinwoo continued. His purple fur was standing up with anxiety. Everyone knows that mantis warriors process combat information thousands of times faster than normal brains. Your human meditation techniques cannot compete with that kind of technological advantage. "Perhaps that is true," Tae-ho replied thoughtfully as he closed his notebook. "But there are different ways to win a fight. Some victories come through strength and speed. Others come through patience and understanding. Tomorrow we will discover which approach works better." Meanwhile, in another part of the cafeteria, Junho held court with a group of admiring alien students from warrior species. They listened with excitement as he described his combat enhancement systems and previous victories. His 4 razor-sharp arms moved through practice motions as he explained different killing techniques. The other students gasped with appreciation. at his skill and speed. "This human challenge is actually quite convenient for me," Junho boasted loudly. His compound eyes glittered with cruel amusement. "I have been wanting to demonstrate proper combat techniques to the softer species in this academy. Tomorrow everyone will see what real fighting looks like when they watch me dispose of this primitive earthling in seconds." One of his listeners, a scaled reptilian from the warrior world of Fang, asked, "Are you not concerned about the human's reputation? As a Deathworld species, I have heard that their planet is extremely dangerous and only very tough beings can survive there." Junho made a sound like metal scraping stone that was apparently laughter. "Earth may be dangerous for normal creatures, but humans themselves are still just soft organic beings. They have no natural armor, no claws, no venom, no enhanced reflexes. Their only advantage is that their weak bodies force them to be more careful about survival. This makes them cautious, not strong." The morning classes proceeded normally, but everyone found it difficult to concentrate on their lessons. Teachers noticed students whispering constantly and passing messages about the upcoming challenge. Even the faculty had heard about the match, and some were quietly concerned about potential diplomatic problems if the human student was badly injured. During combat theory class, Instructor Kang Su addressed the elephant in the room, so to speak. "I understand there is to be a challenge match today between two of my students," he announced in his grinding voice. "While such challenges are permitted under Academy regulations, I want to remind everyone that the neural combat simulation system has multiple safety protocols. No participant can be permanently harmed." This announcement did little to calm the worried students. Everyone knew that while the simulation prevented physical damage, it could still cause severe mental trauma if someone was completely overwhelmed. Neural combat. Defeats could leave fighters unconscious for days and sometimes caused permanent psychological problems. The prospect of a tiny human facing a giant, enhanced mantis in mental warfare seemed almost like torture. As the day wore on, more and more students began gathering near the combat simulation chamber. Word had spread beyond the academy, and even some visiting alien dignitaries requested permission to observe the match. What had started as a simple student challenge was becoming a major event that could influence how other species viewed human capabilities. Taeho spent his lunch break sitting quietly in the academy's observation deck, looking out at the stars through the massive transparent walls. His breathing was slow and steady, and his expression remained perfectly calm. Several alien students walked by hoping to see some sign of nervousness or fear, but the human seemed completely at peace with his situation. A few brave students approached him to ask questions about his preparations. Most alien warriors spent hours before important fights checking their equipment, testing their enhancement systems, and practicing combat routines. They could not understand how someone could remain so still and quiet when facing such a dangerous opponent. "Are you not going to practice your fighting techniques?" one student asked. This was one young from the Technology World Circuit whose body was partially mechanical with glowing energy cores, visible through transparent skin panels. "I have been practicing my whole life," Taeho answered with a gentle smile. "Every moment of peace and quiet is practice for the moments that are not peaceful or quiet. The techniques I will use tomorrow were developed by my ancestors over thousands of years. They do not require machines or computers, just patience and understanding." This mystical-sounding explanation only confused the alien students more. They were accustomed to concrete, measurable advantages in combat: superior strength, faster reflexes, better weapons, more advanced computers. The idea that someone could gain fighting ability through meditation and philosophy seemed impossible to their technology. Focused minds, as evening approached, the combat simulation chamber began filling with spectators. Students from every program squeezed into the viewing areas while faculty members took seats in the elevated observation deck. Even the Academy commander, an ancient being from the first species to achieve space travel, decided to attend this unusual event. The chamber itself was enormous, with walls covered in complex monitoring equipment and projection systems. In the center stood two neural interface chairs, where the combatants would sit during the fight. Large screens around the room would display the virtual battle so spectators could watch the action taking place in the fighters' minds. Junho arrived first, wearing his full ceremonial combat armor. The black chitinous plates gleamed under the bright lights, and his forearms Arms moved through warm-up exercises that left blur trails in the air. His enhancement systems hummed quietly as they ran diagnostic checks, preparing for maximum performance during the fight. When Tae-ho entered the chamber, a surprised murmur went through the crowd. The human wore simple training clothes and carried only his worn paper notebook. He looked impossibly small next to the massive alien warrior, but his calm demeanor had not changed at all. He walked steadily to his assigned chair, without showing any signs of fear or hesitation. Instructor Kang-soo explained the rules to both fighters and the watching crowd. Neural combat simulation creates a shared virtual reality where mental abilities matter more than physical ones. Victory comes through either completely overwhelming your opponent's mind or demonstrating such superior skill that they surrender. The simulation monitors prevent permanent damage, but the experience feels completely real to the participants. Both fighters took their positions in the interface chairs. Mechanical arms extended from the chairs to attach neural monitoring cables to their heads. Jun-ho had multiple connection ports behind his ears, where his combat implants interfaced with external systems. Tae-ho had no artificial ports, so the technicians had to use older-style sensor pads placed on his forehead and temples. The crowd watched the preparation with growing excitement. Betting pools had reached enormous sizes, with almost everyone wagering on Jun-ho to win quickly. A few strange individuals continued betting on the human, but they were considered either insane or secretly hoping for a miracle that would never come. As the final preparations completed, both fighters closed their eyes, and their consciousness transferred into the virtual battlefield. The real fight was about to begin, and everyone in the chamber held their breath, waiting to see how. Tae-ho sat in the very back corner of the huge combat training room. His small wooden desk looked tiny next to the massive metal tables where his alien classmates studied. Their tables had bright screens and floating keyboards, while he only had an old paper notebook and a simple pen. The room itself was enormous, with walls that reached up so high you could barely see the ceiling. Everything was made of shiny metal that reflected the bright white lights hanging everywhere. Around him sat the strangest collection of beings he had ever seen. There was Min-soo from the rock planet Granite, who looked like he was made of living stone. His skin was gray and rough, and when he moved you could hear tiny rocks falling from his arms. Then, there was Hyo-jin from the water world of Aquarius. Her blue skin looked wet all the time, and she had gills on her neck that opened and closed as she breathed. The most scary-looking student was definitely Dong-woo from the warrior planet of Blade. His body was covered in natural armor plates, and sharp spines stuck out from his shoulders and elbows. All of these alien students were much bigger and stronger looking than Tae-ho. The smallest one was still twice his size, and they all had special body parts that seemed perfect for fighting. Some had claws, some had extra arms, and some had skin that looked like it could stop bullets. Tae-ho looked at his own normal human hands and arms. They seemed so weak and soft compared to everyone else. In the class, the teacher walked into the room and everyone got quiet immediately. Instructor Kang-soo was a huge lizard-like creature from the desert planet, Scales. His skin was dark green with yellow spots, and he walked on two legs, but his body was much longer than a human. His tail dragged behind him, making scratching sounds on the metal floor. When he spoke, his voice sounded like rocks grinding together. Today we will learn about neural combat techniques, Kang-soo announced as he walked to the front of the room. His long neck turned so he could look at all the students. Neural combat is the most advanced form of fighting in the galaxy. It lets warriors battle, using only their minds connected to computer systems. The winner is whoever can think faster and make better decisions in the virtual battle space. The alien students all nodded and started touching buttons on their desks. Immediately their eyes began glowing different colors as computer implants in their heads connected to the training system. Tae-ho watched as streams of information flowed directly into their brains through tiny metal ports behind their ears. They could download entire fighting techniques in just seconds and practice thousands of battles in their minds. Tae-ho opened his paper notebook and began writing with his pen. The other students looked at him strangely. They had never seen anyone use such old-fashioned tools before. Min-soo, the rock person, leaned over and whispered in his grinding stone voice, "Why do you not use the brain computer like everyone else? I prefer to learn things The natural way, Tai-Ho replied quietly. His voice was calm and peaceful, which seemed odd in a room full of warriors. I like to understand each technique slowly, and completely instead of just downloading it quickly. The alien students laughed quietly among themselves. They thought this was very funny. The human was so primitive that he did not even have brain implants. How could someone fight in neural combat? Without computer assistance, it seemed impossible, like trying to fly without wings. During the lesson, Kang Su showed them complex battle patterns that appeared as floating holograms above his desk. The patterns moved and changed, showing how warriors could attack and defend in virtual space. Each pattern had hundreds of small details that needed perfect timing to work correctly. The alien students downloaded each pattern instantly, but Tai-Ho carefully drew them in his notebook with his pen when break time came. The students gathered in small groups to talk. Hyo-jin, the water girl, came over to Tai-Ho with several others. They were curious about the strange human who used such old ways of learning. "Tell us about your home planet Earth," she said with genuine interest. Her voice had a bubbly quality like water flowing over rocks. "What kind of warriors do you have there? Are they very different from galactic standard fighters?" Tai-Ho put down his pen and thought for a moment. "On Earth, we have many different fighting styles. Some are very old, much older than space travel. We have something called martial arts where people train their bodies and minds together. We also practice meditation, which helps us understand ourselves and our surroundings better." The alien students looked confused. Meditation sounded like sitting still and doing nothing. How could that possibly help in combat? They were used to enhancement surgeries, brain implants, and high-tech weapons. The idea of fighting with just natural human abilities seemed like using a stick to fight a laser cannon Dongwu. The armored warrior from Blade Planet stood up. His spines rattled as he moved, showing his irritation. "You mean humans fight without any enhancements at all? No computer assistance, no upgraded reflexes, no hardened skin or claws?" His voice was full of disbelief. "That is correct." Tai-Ho answered simply. "We believe that the mind and body working together naturally can achieve remarkable things. We train for many years to develop focus, patience, and understanding. These qualities help us in all kinds of situations, including combat." The alien students started whispering among themselves. Some thought this was interesting, but most thought it sounded completely useless in real fighting. How could natural human abilities compete with advanced technology and genetic enhancements? It seemed like the humans were still living in the Stone Age while the rest of the galaxy had moved far beyond such primitive methods. Suddenly, the room got quiet again. Everyone turned to look at the doorway where a new student had entered. This was Jun-Ho from the aggressive insect planet Mantis. He was enormous, even for an alien standing nearly 8 feet tall. His body was covered in hard chitin armor that gleamed like polished metal. Forearms ending in razor-sharp claws hung at his sides, and his compound eyes could see in multiple directions at once. Jun-Ho looked around the room until his many eyes focused on Tai-Ho. The human was obviously the weakest-looking being in the entire class. His soft skin and small size made him look like easy prey. Jun-Ho had heard that a primitive Deathworlder had somehow qualified for their advanced program, and he was not pleased about it. "So you are the famous human everyone is talking about," Jun-Ho said in a voice like grinding metal. His words were full of mockery. "I have heard that your kind thinks they can fight real warriors using nothing but meditation and ancient techniques. That sounds very amusing to me." Tai-Ho looked up from his notebook and met the alien warrior's multiple eyes with his own steady gaze. He did not look afraid or angry, just calm and thoughtful. "I do not think fighting should be amusing, Jun-Ho, but everyone has their own way of seeing things." This made Jun-Ho even more irritated. The human was not showing proper respect or fear in the presence of a superior warrior. On Mantis Planet, such behavior would result in immediate challenge combat. Perhaps it was time to teach this soft-skinned primitive his proper place in the galactic order. "I challenge you to prove that human techniques are worthy of this advanced class," Jun-Ho announced loudly so everyone could hear. "Tomorrow we will meet in neural combat simulation. You can show us all how meditation works against real fighting skills." The room became completely silent. Everyone stared at Tai-Ho, waiting to see how he would respond. A challenge like, this was very serious business in galactic military culture. Refusing would mean admitting that humans were too weak to belong among real warriors, but accepting meant facing almost certain defeat against one of the deadliest species in known space. Ho closed his notebook carefully and looked at Jun-Ho with the same calm expression. I accept your challenge, he said quietly. We will meet tomorrow as you suggest. As the break ended and students returned to their seats, word of the challenge began, spreading throughout the academy. Alien students from other classes started hearing about the upcoming match between the giant mantis warrior and the small human boy. Most thought it would be over in seconds, but some were curious to see what the mysterious Deathworlder might do. Ho spent the rest of class taking careful notes in his paper notebook, while around him alien students practiced with their high-tech combat systems. None of them could understand how he remained so calm when facing such overwhelming odds. But Taeho had learned long ago that true strength comes from understanding, not from fear or anger. Tomorrow would bring whatever it would bring, and worrying about it now would not change anything.